Going to talk England now with Alejandro Moreno, and ahead of the World Cup, there's still a few players that look like they may be on the bubble of whether or not they'll be part of the squad. Ali, it's very difficult. First of all, we're sitting here during the international break in September talking about which players should be in an England squad for a November-December World Cup. A lot can happen between now and then, but I've got 5 players for you that I want to talk about, and whether or not you think they will be on the plane come November, assuming they're all fit. Now, the first one isn't fit right now, Kalvin Phillips, but played a big part for England at the Euros recently when they reached the final. If he is fit, available, and playing again for Manchester City, would you have him on the plane to Qatar if you were Gareth Southgate?
Yes, if indeed the answers to your initial questions were resounding yes from the doctors and Kalvin Phillips himself. Is he fit? And it's not just fitness in terms of the injury itself, but fitness in terms of actual playing fitness. This is a player that even prior to the shoulder injury and the recurrence of the shoulder injury and then the surgery that would follow, hadn't been playing all that much for Manchester City. Now, that doesn't have to be a deterrent from him going to the World Cup with England if Gareth Southgate thinks that this player can help him regardless, but it's not ideal preparation. And I think we can all agree with the fact that if you haven't been playing all that much, rhythm is not the thing that would come natural to you because you haven't been out on the field in a competitive environment. And so it's a two-layer question with Kalvin Phillips. Is he fit from his injury, and is he fit and ready to play in terms of stamina instead of physicality, in terms of doing the things that he does so well? What makes him a successful player and an effective player, his ability to cover ground. And if you haven't been out on the field, how can you cover that ground effectively? And certainly you don't want to find that out at the World Cup stage. Yeah. I would suggest that if he's fit, he's in the team. But if there are any questions, then he gone.
Okay, so loyalty is something that Gareth Southgate has towards Harry Maguire, and the likelihood is that he'll probably be on the plane. Whether or not he starts is a different matter. My question to you is, if it's Lisandro Martinez alongside Rafael Varane between now and the World Cup for Manchester United and no Harry Maguire, would he be on your plane to go to Qatar?
He's going to be in the plane. But it's a difficult one because it goes against what I just said. Regardless, I put him on the plane because I think he has a value and a presence to the environment within that national team. But there's going to be an incredible amount of pressure on Harry Maguire one way or another, given what he has become at Manchester United. And seem to have become really the player that most people would point at and say, well, he's not in the field, and so that's what we're doing great. He's not in the field, that's what we have improved defensively. And when things were going bad, it was always Harry Maguire's fault, somehow, one way or another, whether it had to do with his performance, what he said, what he put out on social media. Anything that Harry Maguire does nowadays seems to be radioactive. And yet you feel that for England, he has been very good, and he has been a leader, and he has been a strong presence. And I think that's what Gareth Southgate will evaluate him on. Not what's happening in Manchester United, but what he sees when he comes to the English national team. And I think this couple of games for England are going to be critical for Harry Maguire as well. He hasn't been playing for Manchester United. These are 2 opportunities for him to play, and I think he'll be evaluated by Gareth Southgate. But I think regardless, he gets on the plane.
Going to stay at Old Trafford for the next 2, both kind of similar. Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho, both heavily involved in the Euros. Surely they're on the plane, are they not?
Not both of them. Maybe even none of them.
Wow.
I would say that let's go into math, simple math, mathematical question. You have 26 spots going to the World Cup, right? Well, it's actually not 26 because you take 3 goalkeepers, it's 23. And so, all right, how many of those are going to be attacking players? Probably about if I'm the manager, I'm taking 6, maybe 7 as attacking players. And I'm thinking about different types of players, different skill sets, assets that I can use in the attacking half. So let's go with the no doubters that we know are going to be there, barring injury or anything that we may not be expecting. Harry Kane's going to be there. Raheem Sterling's going to be there. Phil Foden's going to be there. That's 3 already. And then guys that you probably think, yeah, they're in. Jack Grealish may be one of those names. Jared Bowen may be one of those names. Bukayo Saka as well. So that's 6 already. I pointed out 6 names already that we think more than likely 3 or 4 of them are no doubters. And then there are a couple others more than likely are going to be there. So that leaves maybe 1 spot, if indeed my math is correct, 1 spot available for an attacking player. So it's not going to be both Jadon Sancho and Marcus Rashford. It's going to be one of them. And a lot of it has to do with whatever Ivan Toney does in these games that he's being called upon. Because why has he been called upon if he doesn't have an opportunity to go to the World Cup? Well, he's going to have a chance. He's going to get an opportunity to showcase something. And what would concern me if I'm Jadon Sancho or Marcus Rashford is that Toney gives you something that you don't already have in this team. It gives you some variety. So I'm looking at Jadon Sancho. He is very much on the outside looking in. I don't think right now where we are, he's going to the World Cup. I don't think he's getting on that flight. And Marcus Rashford, if he does make it, is going to be on the back end. And it's going to be based on some of those relationships that we mentioned earlier, some of those loyalties that we mentioned earlier, that perhaps he's built enough equity with Gareth Southgate. And Gareth Southgate knows him much better than he would Toney. And so therefore, Marcus Rashford gets that final spot. But what if Toney comes into these 2 games and plays really well? What if he makes a really strong case for himself? Is Marcus Rashford not being available? What kind of case is he making for himself? So I'm thinking Marcus Rashford is barely hanging on right now, but he's dependent upon things that happen outside of his control. And that's how well Ivan Toney does in this couple of games.
Yeah, you make several good points there. One being that there's only so many places. Now, if that goes up to 8 or maybe 9 forwards, is he going to take that risk? Is he going to have a balanced squad, or is he going to go top heavy? So there's a lot of kind of questions and not too many answers right now. The 5th of our quintet is someone who's back in the squad for these 2 games in the Nations League, but wasn't in the original squad. Jordan Henderson has replaced Kalvin Phillips. You know what you get from Jordan Henderson. He's like the kind of conductor of the orchestra when he starts. But will he be on the plane? Is there space for Jordan Henderson if Kalvin Phillips goes?
Well, and that's an if question, and very much an if question for Jordan Henderson. It really depends on what happens with Kalvin Phillips. If Kalvin Phillips is ready to go and he is part of this national team, I don't think you have a need for Jordan Henderson, unless you want to give him that spot that we just mentioned, that sort of veteran presence, guy that keeps the group together, a motivator within the locker room. Unless that's a role for him, then I just don't see why he would be on the plane. Again, establishing that Kalvin Phillips is ready to go. But that is the big if. I think it's going to depend. If Kalvin Phillips is ready to go, then Jordan Henderson may be on the outside looking in. If there are questions around Kalvin Phillips, then Jordan Henderson may have a far more important role. He would actually get on the plane with an opportunity to play. Again, he is on the back end of this roster, and it's going to depend very heavily on what happens with Kalvin Phillips, or perhaps other injuries that could potentially come up in the midfield. He would be the first in terms of if there's an injury in the midfield, but he would also be the first out if Kalvin Phillips is ready to go.
A lot of water under the bridge between now and then when the squad is announced. But one thing's for sure, there's going to be some tough decisions that Gareth Southgate, the England boss, is going to have to make as to who's in his squad for the World Cup.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.